Welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skills. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Don Grant.
Welcome, Neil Chadwick. It's an honor to have you on my podcast, and thank you for agreeing to be on here with me.
Well, it's an honor to be on, Dawn. I've been listening to your last few. I'm surprised that you haven't had that Joe Skull on here.
Joe Skull, once and if I do get him on, it'll be a miracle, because he is not one to do like public stuff, and he's just not a fan, but I'm working. I'm wearing him down, Neil.
Well, I've already teed up an interview with him at the Nationals with Johnny Carter from TGS, so you better be prepared for that one.
Now, he is excited about that, so it's a little double standard, but it's there. He is excited. The other ones that have been done have been really nice and done well, so he likes that style and the way they interview him. And
Good.
One of the guys says it's his other dad or something like that, tells Joe he's his other father or something.
Right.
Yeah, so who is Neil Chadwick? Because we obviously have a growing sport, one of the fastest growing sports in the U.S., and many, many people know who you are, Neil, but some maybe don't know. So give us just a little background of who you are and how you got to where you're at right now.
Well, obviously, you can tell by the accent that I'm not a Native American. I was born in the UK, grew up on a farm, started shooting probably when I was about 10, started shooting clay targets. Early 70s, I want to say 72, 73, and that was sort of a little bit by accident, really. Over there we have young farmers, the same as you have 4-H here in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll put on little dues, and there was a local clay pigeon shoot, all hand traps and stuff like that, and I took my old BSA side-by-side full and full down that I would shoot rabbits and pigeons and ducks and everything with. After that, I was hooked.
Nice.
So from then on, I shot basically every weekend, local tournaments, international tournaments, national tournaments. I shot skeet. I joined NASA in 78, 79 and shot American skeet.
Mm-hmm.
I first started shooting FITASC probably in about 81 at a place in Norfolk called Mid-Norfolk Shooting School. Mike Reynolds was the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Started shooting FITASC there and really loved FITASC. I could really relate to that, how shooting the singles and then wanting to shoot the singles, knowing that you've got to shoot it again in a pair. So that started my route on to shooting FITASC, and shot FITASC whenever I could, all over. Obviously in the UK, all throughout Europe, Africa, Zimbabwe once.
Yeah, that's a lot of shooting and goes way back. So how did you end up over here from the UK? So at some point you come over the water.
I did. I came over the water, or the pond, as some people call it. I worked for an American company called IBM. I would think probably quite a few people know that name.
I think so.
And it was at the end of when IBM, had made a terrible decision not to follow the PC route. And the PC was taken over and mainframes were sort of disappearing. And so I took the golden handshake at the end of 90 or 89, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just strange how things come together. I was shooting the World Championships at a place called Rabault in the middle of France.
Mm-hmm.
FITASC is random squatted. Well, you'd never guess who I was squatted with.
Who?
Andy Duffy,
Okay.
John Kruger,
Oh, okay.
and George Hopkins.
Wow.
And another friend of John's, and we got on like house on fire, of course, as we would, because we were the only English-speaking people on the squad. The referee was French or whatever he was, and it just flowed on from there. I got an invite over to come and shoot over in the US, and came over to Maryland, and the very first shoot that I shot here was at George Hopkins.
Okay.
That followed on, just left IBM, and then I teamed up with a guy up in New York, one of Andy Duffy's friends, and we started importing Victory ammunition, right? Shotgun ammunition, which was made in Cyprus, that I'd shot a lot in Cyprus, and I'd met the people that owned the factory. It was a family-run operation. So I started doing that. Well, that didn't last too long. The ammunition was great, but it's very difficult to compete with Winchester, Remington, that
Right.
sort of people.
I could see that.
When they would, I don't know if they do now, but remember, it used to get close to dove season, and Walmart would sell stuff for dove season at a
Mm-hmm.
very reasonable price. Anyway, stop that. Sold trap machines for a few years, got out of that. And then in 2000, I bought the long range company.
Okay. Bought it.
Yeah. So
So it existed?
it did exist. And it was funny because it was started by two Texas Instruments engineers that had also been laid off in the late 80s when Texas Instruments was downsizing.
Yeah.
And they developed a little product that, and I remember it, their logo was a deer. It was actually like the Browning logo. Anyway, they had remote controls that would release trap machines. But the bigger part of their operation was they made pages that restaurants used, and you can remember everybody uses cell phones now. But in some places, you go into a restaurant and you pick up a square pager that flashed at you when the table was ready.
Pager, yes.
If
They
you
still
flip
use
that
those at
over,
some restaurants. Yeah.
if you flip that over, that said long range on the back. And
Okay.
I still get asked, "Oh, you make those pages?" No, I don't. They recently sold that company for $40 million.
Wow.
People in Dallas. Anyway, so I only bought the division that released the trap machines. And at that time, believe it or not, the most machines that we could release was 32. That's all.
Oh, wow.
So
Holy.
I redesigned everything, and it turned out to be what it is now. Now we can release 4,000 and plus machines all at the same time if we wanted to. Not that we want to.
All at the same time. Can't even imagine what that would be like at a quail hunt or
I can't
something.
imagine getting 4,000 machines on any ground.
No.
So that's a brief history of my my journey from over there to over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's evolved to, at this point, you are like the manager, overseer of large events like the Nationals. Yeah.
Yep.
So tell us so you got a few more steps, some target setting, and then overseeing large events.
Well, I guess I owned a small shooting ground in England in the mid 80s,
Oh, okay.
and I'd started setting targets. I wouldn't really call it setting targets, but I'd been what we call wrenching for a guy, which means increase the spring, increase the elevation, drop it down a bit, twist it in a bit, twist it out a bit. You know that. You've heard Joe say that.
Yes.
Well, I started doing that in about 75, 76 for a guy for a local shoot that was on once a month. And that progressed into setting some targets and then having this small ground in the UK. And we only had 20 machines, but I could adjust everything. And I used to get people come along and say, "Hey, I was at such and such over the weekend and I couldn't hit this 45-yard, quartering in, landing at 30 up, whatever." So we would set it up, and we would set up many targets where people wanted to come and practice just a different variety or a specific target.
Yes. Targets on demand.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I first came over in 91, a local guy asked me to come and set some targets for him because and of course in 91, remember, I mean, everything was so new. Sporting clays was sort of only just, it gained a little bit of popularity because we'd had the World FITASC in Chemo Mountain. So especially up here in the Northeast, Chemo Mountain being in Vermont, it was becoming quite popular. And of course, remember then we had the USSCA,
Mm-hmm.
which later morphed into SCA. Anyway, so a local club owner said, I'm not getting that repeat business. And I said, oh, are you changing your targets? He went, well, no, why would I do that, So I said, okay, let me come and have a look. And it was funny because I remember telling you, probably heard this story before, all of his machines were handsets and they were concreted in the ground, bolted to a post.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So first thing I got was chainsaw, cut the post off at the ground, and we moved on from then and sort of turned it in, and people started coming back. So really, that was the
Did he about have a heart attack when you were like wanting to chop him off?
Yeah. He said, "Well, why are you doing that?" I said, well, "You've got
You gotta
so what
move
do
him.
you got to move it." Okay, yeah, okay, we can do that. And really, it just took off from there. I remember it must have been 95 or I can't remember, Dawn. But then I started getting asked to go and set targets, a bit like Joe is now,
Yeah.
all over the place. You got to know a ton of people, some great folks out there, and sort of the more I did, the more I got asked to do.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of the target setting history, if you like.
Yeah. So what's the official title of what you do at Nationals?
Well, I guess if you ask the guys there, I'm chief bottle washer.
Yes.
But no, it's shoot director, shoot chairman, and we spend a lot of time on that. Except obviously it's the biggest shoot in the world. But I usually start working with Pete Mash. He's the manager down there, and anything that needs to be done, from one, I say, hey Pete, I really want that tree out the way because it was in the way for whoever set the targets there, and Pete would do that, organizing machines that come in, organizing the personnel that come in, really sort of working with Pete, organizing target orders for colors, how many middies, how many rabbits, how many batus. All that has to be obviously taken into account.
And I've observed hearing you talk to Joe, it's even changing things up each year. Like where's super sporting going to be this year versus
Yep.
yeah, I'm trying to make it interesting and even improving each year. Like if there was an issue in the previous year with a certain area,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
kind of tweaking.
And we've got quite a big change coming this year because we've cut the pump and side by side down to 50 targets, which is okay. I didn't want to do it. That actually opened up some space. So both 5 stands, Master and A through E and AFS, are now on that big long line of skeet fields in the middle of the property.
Okay, yeah.
So that's sort of enabled us to use some different areas for subgauge. FITASC and Super Sporting are still crisscross or swap over from where they were. K-Cup is going to be back where it was. We moved it last year just to see if people liked it. And was it Alex and Dieter said, no, we want it back where it should be next year. I said, yes, Mr. Krieghoff. So it's back up where K-Cup usually is.
Yeah. So how many years have you been in that position?
Well, I can't tell you.
Yeah. More than 3? More than
Oh,
5?
yeah.
Yeah.
I've been setting targets at nationals now for 28 years.
Okay. Yeah, and then it just morphed probably, right? It
Oh,
morphed
yeah.
over to like now
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
overseeing it.
The
Yeah.
first nationals, I set all the targets with Pete, and because it was nothing like it is now, we were limited. We didn't have that road where the main event takes place. We didn't have that opening. I call it 471. It's usually where Super Sporting or FITASC is, right down in that far corner. We didn't have that. We had the open field where the green course currently is, and we've used that in the past. But of course, the numbers were not any
Yeah.
near
What were they? Do you remember approximately?
250 to 300, maybe a little bit more. But it's, I mean, it's grown and grown and grown. So I think we're getting it right. People come from all. I've got two guys coming from Australia this year. They phoned me up. Can we enter? Yeah, of course you can. Told them
Yeah.
they can't win anything, but they're coming over. They're going to go and shoot. They're going to go and shoot before they get to San Antonio. I've arranged it where they'll go and see Kevin and Henry at Great Houston, and they're going to shoot there a little bit. But they wanted to come over. One of the biggest things I think that's helped us is people like you with these podcasts, Jason Rambo with the Dead Pair,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly Johnny Carter with TGS.
Yes.
If you follow him, and he can be a little bit odd sometimes,
It's a hoot.
but he did that first one at Nationals, and I watched that, and within 2 days, it had something like 30,000 views.
Well, he's so entertaining and he makes it really interesting. And I mean, that's part of what keeps somebody listening or watching, and
Yeah.
he's a master at it.
Yeah, yeah, and I like watching his stuff, even the stupid stuff where he what's he eating chili peppers or something because he missed the target. I mean,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
he's very smart, and I mean, he gives honest opinions on all sorts of shotguns and equipment and stuff like that. But he just comes across pretty neat, really.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And I do agree that that's how the word gets out there. And I think it's pretty cool that they want to come over from overseas and experience something like the Nationals because it is a phenomenal event and
Right.
definitely
Yeah.
worthy of coming to for sure.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So no doubt you are a pro, if we could venture to say an expert in the field. Some people don't like that word, but anything that a human does for 20 years or more, they're definitely an expert in that area. You learn, you live, you learn some more, you learn and live and learn and live. And you've been doing that for a while now in this sport. And, what would you say are some of the maybe obstacles or challenges or issues that may be concerning about the sport that may limit its growth? And I would venture to say that there's been some upheaval related to the FITASC letter that came out from the president and secretary of FITASC. And how would you say that affects people's mindsets related to the sport?
That's a very current question and a very good question, Dawn. I think it's just an unfortunate set of circumstances why FITAS came out with that memorandum or communique, as they call it, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it. Supersporting has been shot now for the past 40 years. I remember and I could be wrong with this, but I think John Bidwell at High Lodge started throwing supersporting, I want to say early 80s. Now, I could be wrong with that, and somebody will say, no, it wasn't John, it was somebody else. But nevertheless, we started shooting supersporting in the 80s.
Yeah.
And FITAS, I don't understand why people have speculated that it was the shoot overseas for Fajara. Is that how you pronounce it? The Fajara Mountain one that George is putting on. Well, that was going to be FITAS format. That's now Supersporting format. Well, okay, well, it was FITAS format last time, but it wasn't a FITAS ranking event. So I'm going to say that FITAS didn't earn any money from that.
Right.
I've heard rumors, we've just had the World FITAS Championships up at Pete's Place, Pete Malloy, and a lot of side events that he threw a Supersporting. And the odd thing is, and you can do it, obviously, Pete didn't put cages out, he put hoops out.
Oh, okay.
So it looked very much like FITAS. But are the two games related? No, not really. We follow English sporting rules in Supersporting.
Mm-hmm.
You can pre-mount. You don't have to keep your gun still until you see the target. You can wear flip-flops and you can wear short shorts. The only it's usually shot in rounds of 100, although it can be 50. FITASC is usually shot in rounds of 25, adding up to 100 or 200, whatever it might be for that particular event. So I don't know why FITASC suddenly came out with it. It's odd to me. There is certainly a difference between English sporting shooters and FITASC shooters. Really can't shoot FITASC, and vice versa. Take Will Fennell. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. I would say that he shoots FITASC a lot better than he shoots English sporting. And then surely FITASC know that people that sort of start off at English sporting and then go to super sporting go, oh, well, this is sort of, maybe I want to try the cream and go and shoot proper FITASC, with the rules.
Right, I could see that.
So I don't know. It's odd to me. I know the CPSA have taken the stance that more or less, we will stick by our shooters and our course designers and referees. And I'm sure, although that hasn't been announced yet, I'm sure the NSCA will take the same stance. I've had many calls from different people. If I'm setting super sporting this week, if I set super sporting, will I be banned from FITASC?
Yeah, it was a serious threat that they were putting out there, a potential threat.
Yeah.
And definitely spooked a lot of people, from target setters to shooters themselves to referees. And I mean,
so I don't know why they would suddenly come out with that after super sporting being shot for so long. And certainly a lot of super sporting shooters shoot FITASC or will change over to FITASC. And we can prove that at nationals. The entry for FITASC at nationals stands at just under 1,000 entries. I look back through my notes. That now is the second largest ever FITASC shoot. The only one that beat it was actually last year in Hungary, when they had about 50 more shooters than us. We've got more shooters shooting that FITASC at nationals than Pete had at the World Championships.
Wow. My years of doing mental training with clients, FITASC would come up as a comparison to sporting clays, mainly because certain people will say, I love shooting FITASC compared to sporting. And when I kept hearing that from different people, so, investigating and diving in to try to figure it out, what the common denominator is with these people is that when they're shooting sporting clays and you're shooting two pair, it's pretty monotonous and pretty repetitive, and they end up losing focus, right? And which is easy when something's monotonous and repetitive and somewhat boring if it's the same thing being repeated. And not that they're bored with the sport, just mentally, it's their conscious mind that will wander. And the conscious mind is actually less likely to wander when there's a new shiny penny. Like there's something new for it to pay attention to. And so that was the main thing that I kept hearing over and over again. And there are people that absolutely love FITASC because of the variety and all that. And if I was to add super sporting into that mix, it would be definitely almost like the transition over, mainly because the singles provide the opportunity for that new shiny penny. Instead of pair, it's single and pair and whatever other combo. And there's no doubt in my mind that would open up the door for someone who wanted to step over and try FITASC eventually. But I don't personally either see them as the same thing. Like the singles is the only thing that's similar between the two, in my opinion.
That's true. You're absolutely correct. And of course, FITASC, you're talking about the mental game. When you shoot FITASC, and I've always loved FITASC, set a lot of FITASC targets. And we got into the habit now of in some events, nationals included, shooting 100 FITASC targets straight through. And I know that talking to people that is a mental strain.
Yes.
Because FITASC, you've got to be thinking about, like you said, your single targets, and that's okay. If you just shoot them single, just shoot them any way you want. But that's not the game. The game of FITASC is you're going to shoot the single because you're going to look at the menu to see, is that first bird or the second bird in a double? Is it a true pair or is it a Raphael pair? people don't sort of pay attention to that. They'll just shoot the single as a singles. Oh, I got 2 shots.
Right.
But they don't pay attention to what the doubles say. When I set FITASC, and I'm sure Joe is the same, we're not worried. They're going to get all the singles, but we're going to catch them out on the pairs
Right.
because they haven't paid attention to where they shoot the single in relationship to how they have to shoot it in a pair. And that's why, the FITASC Grand Prix, World Cups, European World, you only shoot 50 a day.
Yes.
It's a mental strain, I think, to shoot more. And you're correct, English sport, it's 2 targets. You still got to have that mental agility to understand how you're going to attack those 2 targets. But in essence, it never varies because it's always the same 2 targets, whether it's port pair or true pair. So if you're able to work out what you're going to do and come up with a plan and it works, then just keep on with that plan as long as you're mentally able to stay on track.
Stay focused. Yeah.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that I see with sporting clay shooters, especially some of the new shooters, and you've seen it, they start off pretty good and they break the first pair. And you can almost see a look of surprise on their face.
Yeah.
And they, wow, okay. And they'll do the same thing now after the second pair. Wow, I got that pair as well. Now their mental agility changes because now they start to measure. Now, is that like I saw the first 2 shots? Well, as soon as they start to think that, it's gone.
There's so many things. They can become too careful. They can start to measure. They can have a doubt like, oh, I don't think I can, I always drop the last pair. So then the fear comes in, or they can just not be as deliberate about their pre-shot routine because they already got the first 2 pairs. Like there's multiple potential issues that can come up when you're doing the same pairs over and over again. And that's the challenge related to that sport. It's like 2 different kinds of mental challenges when you compare sporting to FITASC. Both can be exhausting, but I have to say I agree, and I can see why there would be less target shot in FITASC because remembering and planning and strategizing and being more deliberate, not just like, ooh, I'm getting these singles, so they're the easy ones, but knowing that those need to lead into the pairs and you can't just knock them out because you want to get those X's on your scorecard. You got to strategize. Yeah. What do you feel a letter like that would do to the mentality and the mindsets of shooters? Do you feel like that would have a positive effect on the sports, or would you say that it would have a potentially negative effect on the sport?
What, Dawn? Which letter?
The letter related to the FITASC.
I'm hoping that most people just say, okay, let it go, let the appropriate organizations sort it out, which they will, the CPSA, the NSCA. I was talking to one of my colleagues, one of the guys that's coming over from Australia last night. He actually wrote a letter to FITASC from Australia and a letter posted in the mail saying, if I shoot our super sporting, will I be eligible to shoot the Australian National FITASC Championships later in the year? He hasn't heard anything yet. And it was more of a letter of a tongue-in-cheek. I think if FITASC are sensible for the good of the sport, I think they'll back down. And I think most people will realize that, hey, why would we go penalizing people okay, if you shoot skeet, you can't shoot sporting.
Right.
You're going to shoot ATA trap, well, then you can't shoot skeet.
It's an interesting kind of more about rivalry and competition than unity. And it reminds me of, so I own a shotgun club. And at times people seem to not want to tell me that they went to Jacksonville, they went to Bradford, I went to Saltwater, or, as if they're afraid and they think they're cheating or something. And I'm always of the mindset, like, go shoot other places. There are different targets, different atmosphere, different environments, different landscapes. And especially for the competitive shooter, you need all of those things in your file cabinet. But I think about that with golf also, because, I've worked with golfers. It's like, you're not going to play one golf course. You're going to play multiple golf courses. So it's not a competition. And I see that about everything, even podcasts. It's not a matter of competing. It's a matter of we're all bringing something different to the table, and let's just be who we are and experience, and offer our little tidbits or a little expertise to it all. And it doesn't have to seem like a competition. We don't have to be upset with people for even liking one more than the other. They're entitled to their opinion.
It's all part of the learning process. That was the biggest thing in the early 90s coming over. When I was shooting in the UK, even though they weren't registered CPSA events, I would do 4 or 5 different tournaments every weekend. The difference being that it was a competition. I was shooting against everybody else that was there. There was no classes. It was who could shoot close to 50. They were all 50 bird shoots, re-entry, and everybody's heard that story before. So the difference between at that time, the UK and here was, in essence, practice in the UK was competition. You cannot always practice in the US under a competitive environment.
Right.
So you have to, in essence, make that up. But it's very difficult to do. You can't go out with it. You can go out with a group of buddies and go, okay, let's put $5 each on this. So it becomes a little bit of a competition, but that's not the real competition. That's not with a referee sitting in a chair telling you what you've scored, dead loft, whatever it might be. So that was the biggest thing that I noticed coming over in the early 90s. Now that's changed, I think, quite a bit with the restrictions in the UK. The ability to throw these 50 bird events has diminished somewhat. Whereas here now, sort of thing, I see the little club's your club. I get your email and immediately a monthly shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's a monthly shoot, immediately you're going to put all those people that come, they're going to be under a sort of a competitive environment, which is good for their mental aspect to the game, because now they're in a competition.
Right. And all of those elements of whether they're fighting for their punches, or they have expectations, or they have doubts, or they believe, I can't do well at competitions, or I never perform as well as I practice, or golly, there's so many possible things that can come up. And I agree, I do recommend to some clients that they attempt to practice as if they're competing, but it's impossible to mimic it. It just really is. And it's not even like Joe sets targets at my club. So it's not even a matter of the actual targets. It's a matter of the mindset of being in a competition. Exactly. And all that means.
Yeah.
So there's another kind of hot topic, and without getting into any specific events, just talking in general, again, going back to opinions and everybody being entitled to their opinion, there are definitely some target setters, and I would say shooters, that believe that at the larger events that it's good. It's okay. It's good to have the screaming targets, the distant targets, the loaded springs and all that. And of course, like Joe is well known for talking about in interviews, and I believe you and him are on the same page, that at these events you can trick shooters in other ways, that they don't have to be the screaming targets. But being on social media personally, I do see that there are supporters of those more challenging screamer targets versus the challenging play with your mind targets at these larger events. So what are your thoughts related to those, and just your beliefs on how it affects, again, the unity of the sport and people wanting to stick around versus quitting and such like that?
You're going to open up a can of worms, you know that, don't you?
With you or all everybody else? I mean, opinions are opinions, right? Everybody's entitled to an opinion.
Everybody's got one, same as everybody's got an arsehole.
That's right.
There's a lot of good target setters out there. And I think that sometimes they get carried away. Take Joe, for example. I mean, he set targets up at Cedar Creek for all these years. And I'm pretty sure that at the end he got somewhat burnt out, because I can guarantee you he put a machine in every single possible place on that property and has thrown multiple targets from the same place.
He claims he has never thrown from the same place, but I don't believe him in 30
I don't
years.
believe him. I don't believe him either.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes some target setters that do not get the experience of going out and looking at other venues, other property, they'll stay and they'll want to put something different on for their club. And believe me, it's all too easy to make it too hard. It really is. You can make a hard target and you can stand there and go, well, that's not hard, but people will have trouble with it. And it's not until you see and watch people shoot it that you go, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I could have brought it in another 10 yards or changed the angle or slowed it down a bit or sped it up a bit. And I do it and I'll see it. Damn, it's one of those things. So when you get the opportunity to go to a different ground, then you've got a different canvas to work on. My personal thought is I like hard targets, and I know the top 100 shooters want hard targets, and some of the other class want more challenging targets. But if we're going to grow the sport, there's a place to throw those type of targets. We started off, I set the first targets at the PSCA shoot at Able Ammo in Texas. And always remember, Danny Carlisle and Steve Liberta come up to me and said, okay, we want you to set these targets. I said, okay, what do you want me to set? Up to you. Make it as difficult as you want. And we did. And that's how the PSCA started off. And it was basically the top shooters shooting difficult targets. And they didn't complain when they shot an 85, because then in the afternoon when they went on a different course, that was somewhat different, and they shot a 93. But they realized that they were going to get tested, which is fine, but that would not work for the majority of shooters, which are A through D. There's not many E-class shooters, but I'll include E-class shooters as well. That's why, in our sport, there are far more people that do not shoot registered targets than there are that shoot registered targets, which is fine because the sport still grows. They're still shooting. And I always use Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania as a classic example. I was involved with them very early on before the present owners. Currently, they throw probably more now, but about 6 million targets a year, not one registered target.
Okay.
And you have to get there early on a Saturday or a Sunday morning to sort of almost book a spot to go and shoot. It's packed all the time. So the challenge comes into keeping the top shooters not happy. I'm not saying they need to be happy, but to make it challenging enough so that the top shooters can fight amongst themselves to get that extra one target or two targets, but also the rest of the shooters feel happy about coming, spending their money, attending the shoot. And I enjoyed that. Yes, I got beat up a little bit and I should have hit that target and I should have hit that target, but I'm happy. Worst case for me is, this is just, when I hear the comment, it was just too hard, I didn't enjoy it.
Right.
Then we're losing our customers, And there's lots of new shooters coming up. I read several months ago, the Minnesota, I think, has 8,000 kids in a trap league.
I love that.
I mean, that's just amazing. Somebody's doing something right now. Those 8,000, some of them are going to move on to skeet, and some of them are going to try sporting clays, and some of them are going to go, I like this. And they're going to come up through the ranks, So they go, okay, now I want to shoot a regional or whatever it may be. And they go to the regional and they're not necessarily at the level where, or rather their expectation is higher than their capability.
Right.
So it's a fine balancing act between not losing our members for the NSCA, because if we lose them from the NSCA, they're still going to shoot, but they're going to shoot a Lehigh Valley type environment where it's not registered. They can go out with their family or a group of friends over a weekend. They're still shooting. That's still good for the industry. But for the organization, we need to grow the numbers that are members of the organization. So you say, okay, well, why? Everybody, like you say, everybody wants to be competitive. There should be a few goals set. Now, to me, I shot for England in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my goals, and I did it in 87. There are a lot of shooters that would love to shoot for the USA. I mean, that's got to be on everybody's bucket list. Unfortunately, most of them are not going to make it, but there's some that could, with a
Right.
little bit of coaching, a little bit of tutoring, the experience. Yeah, they could make it onto a team or onto the various teams, the Beretta team, the Krieghoff team, the Winchester team, the Briley small gauge team.
Mm-hmm.
They make it into something like that. It's an achievement that they've pursued and got to.
Right. You know, a little microcosm of all of this is owning a small, shotgun club. And I would say, on a regular basis, there are daily shooters that come in and will say, "You're going to shoot the competition this weekend?" They'll be, "Oh no, I could never shoot a competition." Little do they know they're shooting targets by the same target setter. Now, granted, we do step it up a little bit. I can't imagine people who are afraid to even start shooting competitions and then actually getting their nerve up to go to a major competition, and then just being blown away by extremely hard targets. I think there would be a quick attrition rate, 'cause they
Yeah.
got their nerve up and the money to go.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be super hard, I don't see them really wanting to go back as much. I think the percentages lean, and this is again my opinion from my observations of reading comments. When I go on social media, I like to read both sides. I like to try to understand both opinions, both mindsets. And I would say that I see majority that are anti the really hard targets and that do say things like, "It wasn't even fun. I'll never do that again. Made me want to quit. Felt like a waste of money." Do see higher percentages of those type of comments when there is an event that has the screaming targets versus "that was challenging but enjoyable. That was fun." Things like that when they're just more mind-twisting type targets.
Yep. You see, the job of a target setter, again, is you've got to make it, I'm going to call it fun, but I like to put on targets that possibly that the average shooter coming from a club may not have seen at his club
Right.
because of the terrain, or it's different terrain, or it's an open field, or he's not used to shooting in the woods or in the trees. So you can put on different combinations where they go, wow, well, we don't shoot that at home. And I've heard that a lot of times as well. So, and it's difficult because obviously, nationals now, I looked earlier on and we're over 2,400 entries.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if I can put anything on that somebody hasn't seen, but it'll be close.
Right.
So you can still make it enjoyable and fun and challenging and separate the top 10% of shooters.
It is really such a fascinating job to be a target setter. I've learned a lot, since Joe and I have been together, but watching him look at things like how many registered shooters, how many are in each class, and can actually gauge his targets based on, let's say, how many master level shooters there are compared to AA or whatever. And then even know by prediction what the highest score will be and almost always be right. It's definitely a science and there's some mastery to it. But I can only imagine the difficulty when you're talking about 1,000, 2,000 people where you need to try to make them hard enough for the top, but interesting enough for the other 2,000 people, because the majority are not the top shooters, right? The minority is the top shooters.
Yeah.
Very difficult task.
but it can be done. I set targets along with Zach and Chip from Forest City. Big Mike was there. Paul from Virginia was there, down at Broadfield for Seminole. And before the tragic accident of his son, John had said, don't make it too hard. So we set it up. I set one course, Zach and Chip set the other course, and we looked and, okay, that's good. That's a fair, challenging course. Of course, didn't Brandon Powell go and shoot 200 straight?
Right.
Well, if you'd have said to me, somebody's going to shoot 200 straight on those two courses, I would have went, no, probably a 195 or a 196, but 200. I mean, just the point being that everybody else had a good time.
Right.
There was nothing that was stupid hard. There were some fun targets, but everybody seemed to enjoy it. And the feedback that I got, I didn't actually receive any complaints, I don't think, on that shoot.
Nice. Well, just came to mind as another observation, hanging out with Joe, is it's not always up to the target setter either. It could be the club owner or the management or whoever's in charge, and they will literally say, make them easy or make them hard. And it doesn't matter if it's a regional or a state or whatever. Like, that person who's making that decision, target setters are hired by them. Do what's being asked. And then also you got the vetting process if it's engaged at an event where there's varying opinions based on how the targets can be also. So it really isn't just one person coming in there, if it happens to be one person course or, 3 or whatever. It's not really just them. And sometimes they can end up getting the backlash, even though they were told specifically, make them hard or make them easy.
That's true. I mean, at nationals, of course, there's it's not just me, but every target setter that comes in, we all go around at a group and look at each other's, and at the end of each course, then I will ask each of them, okay, what's the score, and keep track of that to see how close they are to the actual final score.
Nice.
And that's just something on the side, and everybody's always interested, who got closest. And for a total score on the mains, we're either spot on or within one target either side.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. And
really impressive.
Ask Joe about that.
No, he's told me. I mean, because he usually tells me what he expects the score to be. And I mean, amazing. He's either dead on or one off all the time.
Yeah.
But, speaking of vetting, I have come to really appreciate that. But I've also now noticed when a large event doesn't even have vetting, and that surprises me, because I think, like anything else, it's important to have, multiple opinions or views and possible tweaks, and not just, put the ball all in one person or a few people's courts without
True.
being looked at.
And plus the fact as well, I mean, when we're vetting, my primary concern as well is safety.
Yes.
And I know other clubs have that, but believe it or not, on that 640 acres at San Antonio, I've got 2 or 3 places where shotfall is an issue.
I've heard all about it, especially, and the winds are so unbelievable there, and can come instantly or not be there one day and there the next, and immediately the targets or the presentations are affected. Yeah. So interesting. Well, with all this great wisdom and great insight and experience, what would you say would be, if you could give a tidbit of wisdom to every new competitive shooter, like what would you advise them that be your wisdom that you could pass on?
That's a good question, Dawn. I'll go with what I notice the most.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And anybody that's in masterclass, this really doesn't apply to them. But the amount of people that I notice that do not understand the flight path of a target. That's they're reading it all wrong. They just don't understand what it's doing. They think it's further away than it is, or it's faster or slower than it is, or the direction that it's in. And they look at a target as it comes let's say straight off the arm, and you get a good early view of it. And of course, it's going as fast as it can off the arm. And let's say Joe's put a little bit of left-hand side on it and it's curling away. They still put the lead on it onto the right-hand side of it. It's from the left of the speed of the target that they initially picked up. They don't realize that it's curling away and slowing down. So really, the lead diminishes as the target progresses. So, and it's not easy. It's not an easy subject to learn. Where possible, I would suggest that still keep safe is look to see where the targets on that, where the machine on that particular stand that you're on are placed. If you can see them, if you can't see the machine, then make a note of where it comes out. Does it come out below a branch or a bush? How far away is that bush? Is it coming over the top of that bush? How far across the opening is it going? So I think that would be, my advice would be to try to better understand what a target's doing while it's in the air.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And it reminds me of other conversations I've had on the topic of traps and how they have evolved over the years. And so, 20 years ago, the presentations weren't as tricky to read, and now with these great trap machines and the ability to adjust them in so many different ways, it's totally evolved the sport into something that it wasn't before. And so it opens up this new dimension that you're bringing up that's really important. And it reminds me even of Joe doing like target setting, like training, or being part of his instruction, reading targets, because I would say he has the same observation when he's at events. He sees people misreading targets, and they're a lot easier than they seem, but they're just misreading them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's from a target setter's point of view. Of course, I can use that to my advantage.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to do to sort of make you think that the target's doing something when in actual fact it's doing something else.
Nice. Messing with people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is it can be such a mental game from both sides. Even from my perspective, is I've got to be thinking what the shooter, any level of shooter, is going to be thinking when he gets in the stand and sees a presentation. Does he go, I can't hit that? Negative thought. Okay. I can hit that one. Really? You sure you can hit that one? It's easy to play with somebody's mind as you put targets on, because different people will read a target in a different way. And I go, that's easy. I mean, I'm not talking about anything over 40 yards. I mean, that's a different category altogether. If you're going to throw something with distance, then don't loop it. Try and keep it on a straight line. Try and keep power on it, because at a distance, a straight line target is going to be easier to hit than a looping, dropping, dying target, anything over 40 yards.
Right. And that's a big part of how you're setting targets. And now that's evolved over the years, is it can be really a matter of playing with a person's mind and setting them up in other ways. I hear a lot of talk of kind of messing with them related to the transitioning of going from one target to the other. And that's all very deliberate.
Yeah. I mean, and you're correct. 20 years ago, no, maybe, 20, 25 years ago, you couldn't lean the machines like you can now. I mean, there are an infinite variable with what we can do with two machines, that you can either lean left or right, back, up and down. Back during the 70s, 80s, on most, I think every electric machine, every automatic machine, you more or less had to sit it flat. Otherwise, the target would slide off the arm, or it would slide up the arm or down the arm, and give you a different presentation. So a lot of the target presentations, certainly in the UK at that time, were flat, edge on, with a lot of speed.
Yeah. And then you've got the hand throwers, a whole nother, less varying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great, Neil. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I do appreciate your expertise and your wisdom and obviously all that you've done for the sport over the years. And I do want to tell the listeners that I have some free goodies for my mental training and the Mind Master and also my Shotgun Club if you just go to dawngrant.com/free.
Free.
And free goodies. People even get a free push cart or golf cart at my club. So folks can definitely come shake your hand at the Nationals and
Yep.
say hi to you there and even swing by. No, they probably can't just swing by for steaks afterwards in the big old
Well,
not
definitely not.
invited.
Now we are trying. One of the guys that's been with us a really long time, Morgan Harbison, who was part of Texas Parks and Wildlife, used to bring the cannon in, the big cannon on the wheels that we set off.
Yes.
He took or applied for a new job earlier in the year, and now he is and I've got to get this right for Morgan, he is a park ranger for Texas, I guess Parks and Wildlife or Fish
Yeah.
and Game or whatever it is. So we've lost him this year, and he will be a great loss. He's been with us for the past at least 10 years. He took over the whiz bang thing from Charlie Wilson. Anyway, point being that we're going to try and get, he might still have the cannon. So anybody wants to see the cannon go off 8 o'clock every morning as we start the first flight. And that's usually a lot of people like to
That's
come and
fun.
film it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing to be a part of and all the excitement that goes along with that. Are you still for hire for target setting and
Not so much now. Not so much. Long range is really busy at the moment. I'm busy developing other products, different technologies, all the way up to we've got a kiosk now which is self-serve.
oh, can't wait for that.
Used to take a magnetic stripe card. Well, unfortunately now, and people will know, it's called PCI compliance, where you cannot take the data off somebody's credit card. So that's taken us probably 7 or 8 months now for the kiosk. All kiosks that come out now are PCI compliant, which is just good. It's just good for everybody. Nobody can steal your credit card information, and you can top your card up and buy more targets or whatever it might be.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's things like that I'm working on voice recognition. Now, that's exciting. Well, yeah, but not really, because everybody's got a different accent, and you've been in a car, and it's the same in my car. If I say cancel route to the navigation thing, she doesn't know what I said.
Know what you're saying.
She goes back, I did not understand that, or what did you say? Or please
Gosh,
repeat.
what a
I'm going,
challenge.
just shut it off.
Right.
I don't know how far we'll get with voice recognition, because not everybody says, oh,
Well, what about this kiosk? As a club owner, I do have long range and I'm a huge fan. So is there a possible date of when that will be coming out?
that's out now. We've been
What?
shipping that heavily. So you just drop yourself in it, send me a purchase order, and I'll send you one down.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Now, does it have to be inside or can it be right outside? So, because my
it's-
members can come anytime.
It's a touchscreen PC, so it has to be, I would not leave it outside the screen. They
Okay.
put their card on it, and it comes up with their name, and then they add targets to the card, or they add the cash value.
Oh
And
my gosh, game changer.
tap their credit, tap their reader, it does the transaction, puts the amount on the card, and off they go and shoot. You don't need to be involved at all.
How long has it been out?
The Mag Stripe one, probably 3 years. This PCI compliant one since the beginning of the year.
I'm out of the loop, apparently.
Yes, you are.
I'm excited
Joe-
to get that, though.
Joe just doesn't tell you, does he?
No. He's talking targets, scores, targets.
Yeah. Analyzing targets, analyzing scores.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Neil, for being here and being a part of this and sharing your insight and knowledge. And hope folks come see me at Amelia Shotgun Sports at one of our competitions. If not, I'll see you at the Nationals.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Dawn Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dawngrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Dawn wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.